This is the Fifth Estate Winning Headlines, your media police post. In this segment, we summarize some of the headlines you might have missed this morning, but we also take a look at the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country. Today is the 19th of June 2019, and I am DM.
I am Tuo.
And I am Miss K. In case you missed it, this is Winning Headlines. Let's take a look at today's headlines. The Standard, state moves to put civil servants on contract. The Star, UHURU, Raila to counter RUTO regional tours. And Daily Nation, jobs shocker for public servants. I said we start with the Star. Then we go to the double civil servant shocker.
I'm so distracted by the picture to even look at the headline.
But before we go to the picture, let's talk about this headline first. Did Kanzedena talk about Raila in her briefing?
You tell us.
She did not. She said that the president will do countrywide tours. So I think to sell a headline, the Star needed to add Raila.
Well, they did say that a State House insider did mention that Raila would be a part and parcel of the tour.
I doubt it.
But anyway,
But you're right. I think it's
you can't fault them for putting out a headline that is viable. So I am with you, DM. What is it with this picture and the hashtags that went around it on social media?
I think this picture, the first thing I think is that on the part of William Ruto, this is a strategy. This is very premeditated. Our tailor was engaged to make that uniform. He was measured. And if this dance troupe had a different costume, so for instance, if they had sisal skirts, he would not be wearing it. This is very powerful political imagery, and it just speaks to the militarization of politics right now and the message that it sends. And the message here is very clear that there is, or the message he's trying to send is that there is an army out there, and the army is a hustler.
Yes.
It's a hustler army.
It's a hustler army. And hustler extraction.
And if you see here, there's it's written hustler, the flag of Kenya. All right. I think he's telling us there's going to be in a few years a hustler revolution that will take out the dynasties.
Whoa.
Oh. Yeah, I see Commander-in-Chief vibe messaging.
Che Guevara.
Wait, before we decide what we're going to do with this headline and we discuss the other two together, we have a three-part criteria that we use to break down the headlines for you. We ask ourselves three questions. Is this headline topical or is it speculative? Is it repetitive or is it groundbreaking? And finally, is it thoughtful or just plain lazy? I feel like it's speculative and emotional. Just rearing me up to buy this paper, therefore.
Yes.
Does it? With pleasure. Daily Nation, job shocker for public servants, and state moves to put civil servants on contracts. All I can say is welcome to the private sector.
Oh my God. Can you combine the two because they're talking about the same thing?
Yes, definitely.
Look, I think someone in government has been listening. We've been talking about reduction of government to save us from death.
A huge wage bill.
Yeah. And this is the journey to regulated retrenchment. So they're telling you they're firing you by giving you 3-year contracts. So that after 3 years, they will not renew it.
And that is a shocker because for a long time, everybody knows the safest job you can have
is in
government.
Permanent and pensionable from the day you are hired. And you're just doomed to a life of boredom and hanging your coat on the chair as you go out to make actual money.
So this means better service delivery for us, or?
I hope it means that, because the thing that comes with contracts is fixed timelines. You cannot keep your job indefinitely. Your contract is not open-ended anymore. And you get what Kibaki invented, performance contracts. We know what you're supposed to do. You know how long you have to do it, and you know it too.
Yes, absolutely.
So jobs shocker for public. I think that is more striking.
I think it's more striking.
And it is a shocker.
It's telling you in a couple of years, government can say 100,000 workers who no job.
So are we saying that the Standard is just stating a fact that the state moves to put civil servants on contract, therefore we toss it, and we keep the Daily Nation as our winning headline because now poor 18-year-olds, they're no longer permanent and pensionable. And then the Daily Nation gives us our winning headline. On to our next segment, the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country. Just like the headlines, we have a 3-part criteria that we use to break them down for you. We ask ourselves 3 questions.
Yeah.
Is the cartoon humorous or is it dry? Is the cartoon satirical or is it pessimistic? And finally, is the cartoon effective or just
Plain lazy?
Sorry, the Standard.
You went international first.
Who is this guy they're arresting?
A cartoonist.
Cartoonist too.
He
also.
is the representation of an Israeli cartoonist.
Of Gado's profession.
Yes, I think this guy, I don't know his name, he drew a caricature of Trump and Netanyahu, all right? And Netanyahu wearing this Jewish thing.
No, Netanyahu was the dog.
Was the
No,
dog?
sorry, Trump wearing
yes, the
and
kippah.
Netanyahu is the what?
Lap dog.
Lap dog.
Sausage lapdog.
So he's being castigated for He's being castigated for being anti-Semitic.
Yes, and they were fired.
They were fired by New York Times. Oh man.
I don't know.
And not only were they fired, but now the New York Times has discontinued its cartoon segment, which is quite tragic because they have a long-standing tradition of excellent cartoons.
Excellent political cartoons.
Yes.
If they can fire a cartoonist for drawing Trump and Netanyahu, why shouldn't they fire the people who took images at, you remember the terrorist attack? They took macabre pictures of Africans dying.
But they were just mere Africans, not special
unknown ones.
White people.
Yeah, thanks for letting me know.
And I think DM had another argument, and I think perhaps it's very reflective of our age. Are we becoming...
It is reflective of our times because I think the world is generally becoming increasingly sensitive.
Yes.
The disclaimer for me is, however, that when I saw that cartoon, I didn't get the anti-Semiticism, but it's perhaps because I am not aware of the stereotypes or the stereotype that is being perpetuated there, so I stand corrected. However, that is just a comment.
Absolutely.
What I agree with you. So for that reason, although Gado has a good stance in promoting his career, and his profession, I say we toss it because it's not relevant to our reality. No offense.
The star. This is Ozone.
This is hilarious.
I do think it is hilarious, especially as you remember yesterday's headlines and the triplets, if I could call them that, though they're actually twins plus one, sitting together.
Let me first describe it. All right. Caricature of Raila Odinga, William RUTO, and UHURU Kenyatta.
In tight embrace.
In tight embrace. If you watched, if you saw the headline, I think it was the Standard yesterday, they were wearing the exact same clothes.
Yes.
Those, the twins.
Black and white striped dress.
Yes. All right. Now, Raila and UHURU are hugging. All of them, the 3 of them, Raila, UHURU, and RUTO are hugging. But the person who is coming is RUTO in the middle. And the caption is, will these political twins pass the test of time? But then again, they say our bond is intact.
I like it.
I like it too. I mean, it's a good play on something that is very topical, and he also took something that is highly visual. You see it instantly, and I just chuckled because, of course, it's making reference to the twins. But then Raila and UHURU and RUTO are looking very, very pretty. In their clothes.
I say we bench it. We keep it on the parking bay. We see what Victor Ndula has for us today. Then we look at it against what Ozone has.
Of all of them, I think this is the most clever.
Are you serious?
Yes, it's very clever.
I have to think through. Okay,
let's describe it.
Let me describe it. Caricature of William RUTO with his lapdog, Oscar Sudi, and they are barking at 2 baobab trees. And on the face of the trees, one is Raila Odinga, the second one is a huffing and puffing UHURU Kenyatta, and his face is red.
Still steaming.
Yes, and the reason I say this is clever is I think Ndula chose the trees, the baobab trees, to show that these trees can live for a very long time, over 100 years. And what he's trying to depict is the dynasties, the Kenyatta dynasty, the Odinga dynasty, and the person who's barking at these trees is none other than
a little recycled puppy dog
called Recycled puppy dog. Here's the
I'm so
thing.
impressed too. That is such a deep analysis.
I know, it's such a deep
longevity
analysis
of the baobab tree and the symbolism for the dynasties. Wow.
Which average Kenyan would get there? Please toss it.
Oh my goodness. Are we tossing it?
Yes.
Why? Because it's clever.
Which average Kenyan would get that? The symbolism of the longevity of the baobab tree.
You'd be surprised. You'd be surprised. A lot of Kenyans are not that dumb as we think.
I didn't talk about dumbness. I just talked about interpretation and over-interpretation.
Directed that I toss it, so our winner is?
Today we're tossing a bone at ozone. I think that discussion was funny. It's quite good. What do you think? Yeah.
No, very, very funny. Especially the
Topical.
clothes and the smiling. But yesterday, who said they had funny lips?
No comment, kindly. Ozone from the Star gives us our winning cartoon. And what is our final thought?
All right. And now, our final thought. Inspired by the works of two great gentlemen. First, Malcolm X, who agitated for armed struggle against the systemic racial, what do you call it? Discrimination on black people. Second, Martin Luther King, who agitated non-violence means on this systemic discrimination. Both had the same goals. But there is one thing that stood out for me from the works of both, and that's from Malcolm X, that he was very much inspired by freedom fighters, guys who are forefathers who fought for independence.
Here in Africa?
Yes. And I will read to you a speech that he read in Harlem on December 1964. And I'll read. And it says, "You and I can learn best how to get real freedom by studying how Kenyatta brought it to his people in Kenya and how Jaramogi helped him and the excellent job that was done by the Mau Mau freedom fighters. In fact, that's what we need in Mississippi. In Mississippi, we need a Mau Mau. In Alabama, we need a Mau Mau. In Georgia, we need a Mau Mau. And in New York, in Harlem, New York City, we need a Mau Mau."
Powerful words.
That's intense.
Yeah.
So I'll just bring our audience back to the theme of the week. We have been looking about the African-American struggle, and on Monday we began with slavery and then its abolition.
Yes.
And then yesterday we went into the segregation era, and we looked at it through the lens of the two prominent African-American personalities, then Booker T. Washington and W.E.B. Du Bois, who were public intellectuals, and we're looking at their contributions to the struggle. They, like Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, had the same intention, but they had very different strategies towards achieving that intention. And I think the most famous difference between the two gentlemen is what 2M has mentioned. Martin Luther King chose the path of non-violence and civil disobedience, while Malcolm X chose self-defense
and reciprocal action.
He said, if you let your dog out at me, I'm going to kill your dog. The police did that all the time, letting their dogs out at the African Americans. And I think this is embodied very well in the two speeches that they're most known for. The MLK speech, I Have a Dream, where he's envisioning united America in the future. But then Malcolm X is famous for
the bullet or the ballot.
The ballot or the bullet, where he's saying, we're putting it on the table, we can go to the ballot box. However, violence is also an option. We can take it by force. He's also known to say, by any means necessary.
And also, by the way, Malcolm X was not using this as just this random thing that he was stating from the top of his head. The American Constitution guarantees the right to bear arms to each American individual. And they said, as American citizens, they were not going to let go of any right that they have been given. In fact, I think 2M, you were quoting a very iconic time when they Black Panther movement then went and stood before the White House with guns.
Oh yes, they went
in reference to that quotation.
The government house in California.
Yes, they went and stood up, and they went to where the lawmakers were, and they were holding rifles. And there's this gun called a Thompson, you know, a huge magazine, and the thing releases, I think, like 500 bullets per minute. When those Muzungu saw that, they sweat starts coming down there.
Absolutely. The striking thing is that this, as a segue, this Black Panther movement I saw a documentary on it, and I thought it might as well have been 2019,
oh, yes,
because
absolutely.
what they were responding to is police brutality, which we're seeing all the time
in America.
I am glad I was born as a black person in Africa.
Yes.
And today we're going to focus on two specific differences between Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. The first one we have mentioned is civil disobedience and non-violence versus self-defense and reciprocal action. And the second one, which is also still contentious today, is integration versus separatism.
Yes.
So there's a lot of things that were united or together about Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr.
Yes.
They were both children of pastors, but they grew up to accommodate different beliefs that were founded in different ideologies.
Yes.
Now, Malcolm X, his father, was a follower of Marcus Garvey.
He was.
And as a follower of Marcus Garvey, he initiated and integrated this separatism ideology, where he believed that America was already divided on racial lines.
Yes. Yes.
Since they were already divided on racial lines, at the least the government could do was allow the black people to control the area in which they lived, while the white people controlled the area in which they lived. Because when they came together, then the black man found himself really low down on the totem pole. Therefore, we'll run ourselves, you run yourselves, then later on we can come together after we have established our form of government and come to some sort of agreement on how to live together as a united, better civilization. But on the other hand, and again, Martin Luther King Jr.'s speech is a reference to his belief in integration. He said that he wants the sons of former slaves and the sons of slave owners to be able to sit down together in what he called the table of brotherhood. His dream was that people would not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the contents of their character. And these were very, very differing views. But here's the thing, and I read an article, and perhaps it would be a good thing for us to read, by a guy called Claiborne Carson. He called it The Unfinished Dialogue of Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X. He said, perhaps, because in the end, ironically, and Liam, you're the one who mentioned this, they met the same end. Both were assassinated. And they were assassinated while they were still young, as vibrant leaders with thoughts still in process. Perhaps we could have come to a happy medium, because, and you correctly said, African Americans are still facing the same enduring problems of poverty, despair, powerlessness in the face of injustice. Perhaps they could have come to a happy medium. Perhaps.
A happy medium. But then also I think that these two different strategies that they took were very complementary. Because with MLK's peaceful means, if that was the only thing that existed, the status quo would not see the urgency if there wasn't a violent arm of the struggle. They would not be as immediate in their response. But the other thing that I think we should also mention about the separationist, it was also a black nationalism thing, because these people had been subjugated for so long, and they are now preaching Black is beautiful. That was the Black Panther, one of their slogans. Black is beautiful. We are just as good. In fact, we are even we are even better. And it's also informed by Malcolm X's
travels in Africa.
Even preceding that, even his youth, he grew up facing terrible discrimination. His father
was a child of the system.
And his father was allegedly killed by the Ku Klux Klan. So you can see why he would take that stance. And I meant to ask you people, if we were facing that here, which school of thought would you subscribe to?
I think it depends on your
Malcolm X Street.
Look at this.
Same here. Straight up.
Serious.
Straight up Malcolm X.
Do you know, I actually think that I would have picked an MLK route. Because I do understand, and he came from a position where he said that, fine, it is a dangerous thing to organize a movement around self-defense, because the line separating defensive violence and aggressive violence is very...
But even the Bible says, Ms. K, and you as the pastor in the panel will tell us, Pastor, who takes it by force?
But
something about taking it by force.
Other cheek. It says turn the other cheek.
Which is the Du Bois argument, huh? But I don't think turning the other cheek can ever bring any substantive change.
Let me tell you, if you saw how I think it was a Vanguard of the Nation, Vanguard, I don't know.
Vanguard of the Revolution. About the Black Panther Party.
These guys were, it was equivalent of Tukiapisha to Taapisha. Mkiapisha tutapisha. Mkitupa mawe tunatupa mawe.
And they did it out of necessity.
Yes.
It was, people are being harassed by the police.
These Hammurabi laws that you guys
So
over
we
here.
come with the guns.
These Hammurabi laws that you people over here addressing for are not going to help anyone. Kindly turn the other cheek.
No.
This.
What I'm saying is both are necessary.
Yes.
Both are
important. I wanted to give some grounding to Kenya's context. Did you guys know that around November 1964, Malcolm X lands at Embakasi Airport, as it was known then, and has a stay in Kenya, and he meets this Indian man who had migrated from India and to Kenya. He migrated from India to Kenya, and this guy was gone. Name Pio Gama Pinto. Now, the Islamic, what's it called, Nation of Islam, they have this thing that they say, we all know Pio Gama Pinto was assassinated. But they say as well that the reason why Malcolm X was assassinated is because he was radicalized by this Goan man. Now, interesting dates. February 21st, 1965, Pio Gama Pinto is killed somewhere in Westlands here in Nairobi. February 25th, Malcolm X is assassinated. Now, what the Nation of Islam says is that they were both assassinated by CIA. Reason being, first, Malcolm X was a creation, and this is a hypothetical position, cannot be said to be true, that he was a creation of the CIA.
Violently disagree.
Yeah. I don't know, but the timeline of the dates, February 21st, February 25th, who could have done such a job, same means of assassination?
Across oceans.
Across oceans. I mean, CIA was in Africa then. Who could have done that job?
Yeah, that is very interesting and curious. That a lot of things I disagree with there, but I suppose we do not have the time. But something else to point out about the overlaps between the African American and the African struggle.
Yes.
You do remember at 22, was he 22? 27?
Yes.
Tom Mboya met Martin Luther King in
was it, I don't know where, they were addressing a rally somewhere, I think in New York, in Washington.
Was it in Washington, addressing a rally?
Yes.
Yeah.
You know,
and I will end our episode there today.
Yeah.
This is Winning Headlines. We had a winning cartoon from, I can't even believe it. I don't know if 2J will allow this to happen ever again. Ozone of the Star, and a winning headline from the Daily Nation. What I will end is this, based on your very somber ending quotes. And I will quote Martin Luther King Jr. as he said it at the assassination of Malcolm X. The African Negro cannot afford to destroy its leadership. And you've talked about destroyed leaders.
Yeah.
Men of talent are too scarce to be destroyed by envy, greed, and tribal rivalry before they reach their full maturity. Think about those thoughts. Have a great day. See you tomorrow.
It was the CIA.